Chapter 4. They kicked the ball around for a while, and then Bean said, "Let's go to the park." He booted the ball down the middle of the street. "Why don't we play here?" said Palmer, but the others were already dashing after the ball. "Let's go to the park." Palmer hated the park. He never played there, never swung on the swings, never slid down the sliding board, never fed the ducks, never watched a softball game. Most especially, he never went near the soccer field, for in 1 month, 4 short weeks after his birthday, the soccer field would become, as it did every year, a place of horror. He walked 4 blocks, and he was at the park. He hoped they would be at the softball field, but he knew they would not. Nor would they be at the baseball field, or the basketball court, or the tennis courts, or the World War I cannon, or the playground, or the Boy Scout cabin, or the picnic area. He heard, then saw them at the soccer field, racing and yelping like puppies in a pasture. He stayed on the sidelines, walked along the chalked edges of the field. "Come on, Snots," they yelled, and kicked the ball his way. "Can't," he yelled, lying. "My leg hurts." To prove it, he threw the ball back. "I'll just stay here and watch." He hoped they wouldn't be mad at him for not joining in. He loved to see them playing with his birthday present. Each thud of a foot said, "We're kicking your soccer ball. We like you. You're one of us." He wished it could stay like this forever. But it changed. Beans backed up and pointed at Henry and yelled, "There's one!" Henry began flapping his arms and swooping in circles, being a bird. Beans and Meadow made their arms like shotguns and pulled the triggers. Pow! Pow! Henry veered, lurched, tilted, staggered. To Palmer, tall, gangly Henry did not look like a bird at all, but a giraffe with 2 howling hyenas snapping at his knees. It had long seemed a curious contradiction to Palmer that among the 3 kids rollicking on the field, Henry was the tallest, yet also the meekest. Palmer had the sense that he was seeing more than a game, that Henry was not just a member of the group, but also its prey. After a minute or two of lopsided, long-legged careening, Henry flopped to the ground. "Wringer! Wringer!" shouted Beans. "Wringer! Wringer!" shouted Meadow. 4 hands clamped around Henry's neck, shaking Henry's head like a rag doll, twisting it this way and that. "Wringer! Wringer!" Henry's legs flailing, shrieking laughter. "Wringer! Wringer!" Palmer tried to hold the moment there, but it would not stay. It tunneled back through time and burst up onto this same field 3 years before, the first Saturday in August, when the grass was streaked with red and guns and booming and birds were falling. From the treetops, from the clouds, they plunged to the earth, thumped to the ground, sometimes with a bounce, and still some of them lived, flopping drunkenly across the grass until a ringer grabbed one by the neck and twisted, and that was that. Beans and Meadow were now at each other's throats, rolling, rumbling, rollicking across the grass. Henry woozy, but up now, laughing with the others, then heading off with the others, the 3 of them yelping and kicking the ball up through the picnic area. Palmer did not know why he stood there, alone at the edge of the field, the last place on earth he wanted to be. As the voices of his new friends died away, he was aware of the silence. He looked up. Nothing flew in the sky. Nothing called from the trees. For a moment, a dragonfly hovered before his eyes like a tiny helicopter, then darted off. That was all. Silence and stillness. He ran. Chapter 5. He caught up to them at the playground. They were diving headfirst down the sliding board, stacked, all 3. "Come on, Snots, make it 4, Beans called. Palmer's mother had told him about sliding boards, way back when she started to bring him to the playground. Hold tight to the rail as you climb the ladder. No sliding down stacked. No sliding down head first. But this was a new time. He wasn't here with his mother. He was here with the guys. His guys. "Snots, come on." He joined them on the ladder. As the stack arranged itself, he wound up on the bottom. He could not take a deep breath. He could feel the shape of his belt buckle in his stomach. He could smell the tinny slide. And down he went. And for the 2-second trip, Palmer felt something more than the thrill of the plunge. He felt his friends riding him, clutching him, depending on him. Had the slide been 1,000 feet long, he would have carried them happily, and then they were spilling off the end like potatoes dumped from a sack. Again and again they rolled the slide, taking turns on the bottom. The first time Beans was on the bottom, he clamped the sides halfway down and stopped, sending the rest of them tumbling to the ground. A lady called from the swings, "Hey you kids, no stacking." And Beans pinched his nose and honked. "Eh, you're an old man." and as they went flying down again. Meadow and Henry honked too. Finally, Palmer did it, his back to the lady, pinching his nose, getting it out. Your old man! Just before the giggles came, forgetting he hated the park. Then Beans was pointing from the top step, shouting, "Look!" Everyone followed the pointing finger to the kid leaning against the monkey bars. A big kid, chewing on a beef stick. Meadow gasped. Farquhar. Farquhar was. Legendary Wringer, the coolest, most feared kid in town. Why was he staring at a bunch of 9-year-olds? Beans called to Farquhar. Here he is, he was pointing at Palmer, the birthday boy. Suddenly Palmer understood. His birthday was no secret to Farquhar. He was about to receive the ultimate honor, the ultimate test, the treatment. Farquhar started walking. They followed. Nobody gave the treatment like Farquhar. Palmer knew a kid who had had his arm in a sling for a week after. Yet Farquhar himself was maddeningly unpredictable. Some birthday boys he seemed to totally ignore, passing them on the street as he usually did, as if they were a dog do. On the other hand, he had been known to walk halfway across town, knock on a door, and say sweetly to a surprised parent, "I hear the birthday boy's in there." Some kids turned into quivering zombies. They kept their birthdays as secret as possible. In school, if their teacher announced their birthday, they denied it, claiming it was a mistake. They refused to have parties. They stayed inside their house a month or so they would not bump into Farquhar. But there was another side to it. There was the honor. There was the respect you got from the other kids. The kind of respect that comes to soldiers who survive great battles. There was pride in yourself, in knowing you passed a test more dreaded and painful than any 10 teachers together could give. Farquhar led them to the World War I cannon. The cannon was on a small grassy hill overlooking the park. Farquhar approached Palmer. With the end of one finger, he pushed the last segment of beef stick into his mouth. "Left or right," he said. Palmer had not known he would get a choice. "Left. No right. Make up your mind. Left. Left it is." Farquhar rolled up Palmer's left shirt sleeve to the top of his shoulder, so that the entire arm was bare. Farquhar studied the arm for a long time, pressing, feeling, like a doctor. Finally he said to Beans, "Put your finger right here. Don't move till I say." Palmer felt Beans' fingertip on his arms, on the bony part about halfway between the elbow and shoulder. Farquhar spat on his own fingertip, rubbed the tip in dirt, with the resulting mud, made a mark on Palmer's arm where Beans' finger had been. At this point, it was rumored, some kids wet their pants. "Blindfold?" said Farquhar. Palmer looked over the peaceful scene. People playing, walking in the park, the trees, children's shouts. "No," he said, but nothing came out. His throat had turned to sand. He coughed, swallowed, tried again. "No." "Okay," said Farquhar, "don't move." And don't look, thought Palmer. That's what he had always heard on the street. If you ever get the treatment, don't look. By the time Farquhar bunched up his fist and stuck out the knuckle of his middle finger, it was hard as a ball-peen hammer and sharp as a spear. Bad enough you had to feel it. Don't make things worse by watching it coming. Farquhar took the position to Palmer's left side. He backed off a step, spread his legs, planted his feet firmly. He crouched, lowering himself. Palmer felt a gust of beef-stick breath. Beans and Meadow stood directly in front, grinning, as if watching someone about to get hot-foot. Palmer wished he had asked for the blindfolds. Henry was off to the side. Palmer took a quick look at him and wished he hadn't. Henry was not grinning. His eyes were wide as a hangman's noose. Palmer turned back to find Beans's grin wider than ever. Beans had the most incredible teeth Palmer had ever seen. Beans swore he had not brushed them since the big ones came in. At one time or another, Palmer had seen every color in the crayon box on Beans's teeth. Their major color was dull yellowish-brown, fringed with green. Beans and Meadow shouted, "One!" as the first rap hit, and Palmer had understood instantly the genius of Farquhar. He understood that Farquhar somehow knew his body better than he himself did, that there was no need to rear back like the baseball pitcher and bring the whole fist, that when the perfect spot is found, the tip of a knuckle, fired from a mere 6 inches away, is enough. Enough so that Palmer's whole body was sucked into a suddenly new sinkhole in his arm. But Palmer kept his mouth shut. "Don't scream," the street had always said. "If you do, you'll get an extra." 2. Tears sprang to Palmer's eyes, smearing the grins of Beans and Meadow. Don't cry, the street said, or you'll get 2 extras. 3. Palmer bit his lip and screamed inside his head, bashed chairs and flung himself against the walls of his brain case. Stop, 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 stop! 4. He takes his time. You want it to be over fast, but he goes real slow. Henry had turned his back. 5. Mommy! 6, 7, 8, 9. Chapter 6. What happened to your arm? Palmer's mother was lifting his shirt sleeve and asking him a question he did not want to answer. I said, what happened? The treatment, said his father, coming into the room. He mussed Palmer's hair. Right, big guy? Palmer nodded. Even nodding seemed to hurt his arm. Right. His father inspected the spot. He whistled softly. He nodded gravely. 9 hard ones, huh? Right. Palmer stood a little taller. He felt as if his father had just pinned a medal on him. But his mother's voice was strained. What are you talking about? What treatment? His dad spoke for him. It's been a tradition for years around here. On your birthday you get knuckled once for each year old you are. It happened to me plenty. She sneered. That doesn't mean it has to happen to him. She lifted his shirt sleeve again. Look at that. Look. It's a bruise, said his father calmly. It goes away. He's okay. Right, big guy? Was he okay? His arm wasn't okay. It was killing him. But what about the rest of him? Given an extra, Beans and Meadow had shrieked. He's crying. But Farquhar had said no. It was just eye tears. Everybody gets them. And he had carefully, daintily really, pulled Palmer's shirt sleeve down over the wound and said, Happy birthday, kid, and walked off. And in that moment, Palmer loved Farquhar. Was he okay? Sure, he said, and he gave a little chuckle just to prove it. Well, said his mother, aiming her voice somewhere beyond the room, I'm not okay. He had those hoodlums here for his party. Beans, said his father. Palmer gladly answered, Yeah, Beans was here, and Meadow and Henry. His father wagged his head. He's a pip, that Beans. Hoodlums, his mother went on, and they didn't even like Palmer that much. They never pay any attention to him. They never play with them. They do now, Palmer protested. They were just waiting till I was 9. His mother ignored him. He invites them, but little Dorothy Grezzik he doesn't even invite. She bore down on him. Why not Dorothy? She's a girl. She's your neighbor. She's one of your best friends. Palmer laughed out loud. Sometimes his mother tried to make something come true simply by saying it. She's not, he told her bluntly. If she didn't live across the street, I'd probably never see her. She invites you to her parties. Palmer was fed up. Why did his mother have to go on the warpath, just when everything was so great in his life? He blurted, She has a fish face. His father laughed. His mother's eyes went wide, and then she abruptly changed topics. And the nickname, she said to his father. You should hear the nickname they gave him for his 9th birthday, the Hoodlums. She tapped Palmer on the shoulder. Tell him. Snots, said Palmer. It was already beginning to feel like his. Snots, his dad echoed. Now what kind of name is that? Said his mother. Where did that come from? Palmer shrugged. In truth, he had no idea. Beans gave out the names. His own obviously came from his appetite for cold baked beans out of a can any time, day or night. Meadow? A mystery. There was no dog in Meadow's life that Palmer knew of. And Henry, that sounded more like a real name than a nickname. But Palmer couldn't imagine Beans letting someone's real name stand, so Henry must be someone else too. Seeing that no answer was coming from Palmer, his mother gave up and walked off muttering, Doesn't have the good sense he was born with. Well, Snot, said his father, sorry I didn't make it to the big party. Here's a present if you think you can stand another one. He reached into the dining room hutch and pulled out a gift-wrapped package. Palmer tore the paper off to reveal an old frayed shoebox. He gasped. He knew what was coming, but still couldn't believe it. He lifted the lid. Your soldiers! Yours now, said his father. They were 27 toy soldiers. They were made of lead, which in many places showed through olive green paint. They were 2 inches tall, and they were very old. The helmets were shallow like soup bowls. They had first been played with by Palmer's great-grandfather, then by his grandfather, then his father. Palmer had played with them many times, but only with his dad's permission. He had always thought of them as the most valuable things in the house. His dad kept them in a shoebox behind a suitcase in the back of a closet. That is, his father added, if you promise to take care of them and pass them on to your own son someday. Palmer could only nod in wonderment. I can keep them in my room? Sure can. The night in his room, Palmer debated where to hide the 27 toy soldiers. He chose a high shelf of his closet, where he could not reach without standing on his chair. He had to carry the chair and reach up with his right hand. His left arm was useless. His fingertips tingled. At dinner, he had let it plop on the table and stay there. His mother kept glaring at it. Sometimes his arm felt numb, as if he had been sleeping on it, but mostly it hurt. He found that if he kept his mind busy, he didn't notice the hurt so much. He read a book, watched TV, inspected his presents, thought about the day. What a day! New birthday, new friends, new feelings of excitement and pride and belonging. His mother was wrong about the guys never playing with him. He had had a lot to overcome, that was all. Being the youngest, the shortest, and his unusual first name. He took lots of teasing there. But that was all over now. He fell back on his bed. He grinned at the ceiling. Life was good. While brushing his teeth that night, Palmer looked at his face in the mirror and suddenly began to cry. He cried so hard he could not finish brushing. He ran to his room, shocked and angry at this unexpected turn to his perfect day. Sobbing loudly, gasping for breath, he plunged into his bed and smothered his face in his pillow. He was not aware of turning the ceiling light off and the night light on. He was not aware that he ever stopped crying. In his sleep, a voice echoed down the long, dark barrel of a cannon. You have run out of birthdays. In the morning, he awoke suddenly to the flutter of wings.